Who are some of the top trade targets for week 5 of the fantasy football season? I'm going to give you some guys that you need to be targeting that will help you win your fantasy football championships. These aren't necessarily like buy low candidates. These are just guys that I believe aren't correctly being valued by the fantasy football community. So I make new videos like this every single day. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoy this content at any time, hit that like button for me and let's get into the video. The first player for me is going to be Darrell Henderson. And once again, this isn't a buy low. It's guys that aren't correctly being valued. To me right now, Darrell Henderson is a locked and loaded top 10 back in fantasy football. Yes, you heard that correctly, a top 10 back. And let's look at a couple things here. So I was a little hesitant on telling people to play Darrell Henderson this past weekend because Sony Michel was there. And I wanted to see what the snaps were going to be with him and Sony Michel. Looking decent last week. And Sony Michel was a non-factor. Darrell Henderson played 90% of the snaps this past weekend, which is fantastic. He's basically playing Najee Harris snaps right now, snap level, but he's on a much better offense. He's playing on one of the league's best offenses right now. So imagine Najee Harris playing for the Los Angeles Rams. That's what you have right now with Darrell Henderson. This past weekend, he saw 6 targets, had 5 catches. Right now, he's 14th in red zone carries at the running back position. He's tied for 6th at inside the 5-yard line carries right now, and that's all despite missing 1 game. A Sean McVay running back is going to see a lot of work around the goal line where this team should be a lot this upcoming season. Barring injury, Darrell Henderson should finish as a top 10 back in fantasy football. So you need to go out and try to get him now, especially before the Seattle game this upcoming weekend. Buy him now. This is your last opportunity. He's a top 10 guy for the rest of the season. The next guy on the list is going to be Brandin Cooks. And what you probably had this past weekend, he didn't play that well. It wasn't really his fault. This offense was just horrible this past weekend, but they're not going to play Buffalo every single week, who Buffalo right now looks like one of the best defenses, has one of the best defenses in the NFL. So what you had this past weekend is probably somebody that was confident to start Brandin Cooks finally in the flex spot, and then they got burned by Brandin Cooks. And now with New England coming up, they're probably going to sit Brandin Cooks once again. So what I would do is try to go target him right now. Right now, I would go and try to target him, and here's why. Brandin Cooks right now, you're seeing everything that you want to see in a wide receiver. His target share is ridiculous. His air yard share is crazy. Everything for him, his targets, just everything is great for Brandin Cooks right now. Yes, it wasn't great this past weekend, and he has Davis Mills throwing the ball, but I don't really care. This defense is bad. This team is bad. They're going to throw the ball a lot. With Tyrod Taylor, he looked pretty solid as well, so once Tyrod comes back, things will get a little bit better. So buy Brandin Cooks right now while this manager is probably not playing him this upcoming week against New England. This is a perfect opportunity to try to buy in. He's a top 25 wide receiver for the rest of the season. So buy Brandin Cooks. The next player is going to be Calvin Ridley, and this is going to be really tough for you to try to get him, but I'm willing to say him and put him on the list because right now I've received a bunch of questions about Calvin Ridley and what to do with Calvin Ridley. Should I try to trade him away? So that makes me believe that you should try to go in and buy low on Calvin Ridley. Now, not necessarily buy low because he had a decent week this past week. And really, he's having a decent season. It's nothing crazy like last year, but he's still playing good football. And right now, he's really checking off all the boxes for the wide receiver position as well. His target share is elite. He's seeing red zone targets. His air yards are really good. The only thing that's a little bit low is his ADOT, but that's going to get better. And you're not going to have Cordell Patterson, who had 11 touches this past weekend and scoring 3 of them. That's not going to happen every single week. Better days will be ahead for Calvin Ridley. And if there's a manager in your team, in your league right now, that's considering like, what should I do with him? Should I try to trade him? Go talk to the manager, see if they're willing to move him, what kind of pieces they're willing to move him for, and go from there. So Calvin Ridley is the next person. The next player on the list is going to be Michael Pittman Jr. And right now, once again, with like Calvin Ridley and Brandin Cooks that I said, right now you have with Michael Pittman, he's basically checking off every single box that you want in fantasy football at a wide receiver position. The only thing that's missing right now are the touchdowns. And that's not concerning at all for me because right now you have two players at the wide receiver position that have seen 11 red zone targets and have yet to score. Him and Courtland Sutton. Those are the only 2 players right now in football that have not scored on 11 targets. So touchdowns will come for him. He's seeing an elite target share, one of the highest air yards share for his team, one of the highest in the NFL. Right now, you have every single box right now for Michael Pittman is being crossed off, but the touchdowns. Once the touchdowns start coming, you have the recipe for a top 20 wide receiver in fantasy football, a wide receiver too. So go out, try to get Michael Pittman, because I don't believe anybody is valuing him right now as a top 20 wide receiver in fantasy football. Has that potential. Now, certainly, he could just really get unlucky this upcoming season, not really score any touchdowns. That can certainly happen any season, but right now, he should see positive regression for touchdowns. So go out and try to get Michael Pittman before it's too late. The next guy on the list is going to be Damien Harris. And I know the past 2 weeks have not been great for Damien Harris, but these are two stout defensive fronts that he just played against in terms of stopping the run. So especially this past weekend, it was not going to be a good game by any means. So that's okay that he didn't have a good game. But what was really encouraging for Damien Harris, though, what was really encouraging was his passing down work. He led this team at the running back position in passing down work with 18 snaps to Brandin Bolden's 11. Now, Brandin Bolden out-targeted him. He had 6 targets, I believe, but that's okay. Because if Damien Harris is actually going to have a receiving role, it makes him a viable RB2 for the rest of the season. The biggest knock on him is just his receiving work. He doesn't play into the receiving downs. Now with James White gone, and if this role continues throughout the season, absolutely he's going to be an RB2 every single week, depending on the matchups. And with some easier games coming up against Houston, then he gets Dallas and the New York Jets, fire him up. Go and try to get him right now as an RB2 as long as this receiving role continues. So once again, I got to put a little disclaimer in there. It's only 1 week, but if you see this receiving role continue, which I believe it could definitely continue for him, because I just think he's the most talented running back in this backfield, then he's an RB2 every single week. So that does it for me. If you enjoy this content, make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.